everyone, it's Jane here for Time for Tea Designs, and today we're going to be making an Eclipse technique card. So an Eclipse technique is where you cut something, usually a sentiment, from a background pattern, and then you elevate that die cut up so that the die cut becomes visible against the background. So the first thing that we're going to do here is make the background for the card. And I'm ink blending some white pigment ink. The one that I've used is Hero Art's Unicorn White Pigment Ink through the Autumn Leaves stencil by Time for Tea Designs. And I'm going to do a really cool shadow technique here. So I've just cleaned off my stencil so there's none of the white pigment ink left, because it is really kind of sticky and it will contaminate your next ink pad if you don't clean it off properly. So I have a separate blender brush for my pigment ink as well. So I've given that a good clean. I've placed it back down onto the stenciling, and then I've shifted it slightly to the right and slightly downwards. And then I am applying some Aged Mahogany Distress Oxide over the top of that white ink blending. And you'll see that you have to use quite a bit of ink here because that white pigment ink is so saturated and so strong. It does take quite a bit of coverage to go over it. So I'm just doing that here, making sure I've got all of the areas covered. I have to say, I'm really loving the fall vibes of these colours between the Kraft cardstock and that Aged Mahogany. So now I'm just lifting up my stencil to reveal the background. And as you can see, the white pigment ink creates this kind of cool shadow effect behind the coloured ink, and gives it an almost 3D look. So to create our Eclipse card, I'm going to take one of my bold, large sentiment dies. As you can see, I've not used this one yet. I've been waiting to have the opportunity to. And this technique is perfect for those large sentiment dies that you might have. So I have cut the sentiment out from my background panel, and I've kept all of those little inside pieces as well because we're going to need to use those later. And I've also cut the sentiment out of 6 pieces of white cardstock. So the first thing I'm going to do is glue the background panel down onto a white 6x6 card blank, just making sure to get it in all those little nooks and crannies there, so it's properly glued down. And then the next thing I'm going to do is take one of my white die cuts and glue that into the gap in the centre. This is going to form our kind of jigsaw puzzle type base, where we're now going to get all of the little bits and pieces from the background panel that we die cut, and we're going to glue them in place in the centre. Now it's really important that we glue them the right way up, because what we're looking to do is complete the original picture. So what I've done, you'll see me referring back to it occasionally, I need to take the patterned die cut for the insides of the O's, for example, when I'm not quite sure which way up they go. I just refer back to this original piece here to make sure that they're going in the right way round. I actually find doing this quite therapeutic. It is like doing a jigsaw puzzle, which is something I've not really done since I was a kid, but I do quite enjoy the process. So now all of those little pieces are in place. I'm going to glue the extra white die cuts on top. I've only shown 2 here on camera, but I did the rest of them off camera. So there are actually 6 stacked on top of each other to give the sentiment the dimension it needs and to really stand out. So now I'm just gluing the patterned piece on the top to kind of complete that background picture, and pressing it in place with a wood block. And then as you can see from above, you can almost not even see that the sentiment is there, but then when you tilt it to the side, it becomes visible. So I love this technique. I think it's really cool, and you could totally leave it as it is and that card would look fantastic, but it wouldn't really be Time for Tea Designs if we didn't have some cute critters. So what I have done is stamped and Copic coloured the hedgehog and the fox from the Woodland Critters stamp set. I'm just popping them on here with some foam dots to give them some dimension to kind of match the raised up sentiment. I did the colouring for these off camera, but if you're interested in the Copic colours that I used for both of these critters, then they are listed out in the blog post which accompanies this. Now, for some reason, my camera stopped recording at this point, but you didn't miss much other than the fact that I stamped the Sending Hedgehogs sentiment from the same stamp set onto some white card. And I have just trimmed that down with my paper trimmer, and I'm going to attach that to my card front again with some foam tape so that it matches up with the level of the sentiment and the critters that are on there. I do love these thin foam strips for sentiments and things like that, so you don't have to cut down the big rolls of foam tape that I would normally use. And then that finishes up today's card. So I hope you enjoyed both the techniques there, the kind of 3D background and also the Eclipse technique. And if you are inspired to do the same, please do share it on our socials. We'd love to see what you make, and I will see you again next time.